I want you to remember something about humiliation. Real humiliation doesn't always come with raised voices or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives in the middle of Christmas dinner, wrapped in calm words and a casual tone, delivered by the person you raised with your own two hands. Christmas Day, 2023, Denver, Colorado. Snow falling in thick, silent curtains outside my daughter's dining room window. The scent of glazed ham mixing with cinnamon from the candles Erin had placed on the mantel. Everyone gathered around her table. Erin and her husband Joseph, his parents, his brother's entire family, even a visiting aunt from Texas I'd never met before that afternoon. 11 people total. And me. I sat near the end of the table, closer to the kitchen than the fireplace, which should have told me something right there, but I'd learned long ago not to read too much into seating arrangements. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was just grateful to be included. Halfway through the meal, Erin set her fork down. She had that look on her face, the one she gets when she's about to make an announcement she's already decided is final. I recognized it from when she was 16 and told me she was quitting softball, or when she was 22 and said she was moving in with Joseph before the wedding. She looked directly at me. "Mom," she said, her voice steady and clear enough that conversations around us began to fade. "Your needs come last. My husband's family comes first." The words hung there like smoke. Joseph, sitting beside her, nodded. He didn't even glance in my direction. Just a small, agreeable nod, like she'd said something as simple as, "Please pass the salt." The table went silent. Forks stopped moving. Someone's glass clinked against a plate. His mother glanced down at her hands. His brother's wife suddenly became very interested in her napkin, but no one said a word. And Erin? She didn't flinch, didn't soften it, didn't add, "I didn't mean it like that," or, "You know what I mean." She just sat there, calm as Sunday morning, waiting for my response. I reached for my water glass. My hand didn't shake, which surprised me. I took a slow sip, set it back down, and met her eyes. "Good to know," I said. That's all. 2 words. I didn't argue. Didn't ask her to explain herself in front of everyone. Didn't cry or stand up or make a scene. I simply acknowledged what she'd said, the same way you might acknowledge someone telling you it's going to rain tomorrow. The room flickered with discomfort. A few people shifted in their seats. Joseph's father cleared his throat and mumbled something about the weather. His aunt from Texas suddenly found a reason to check on the dessert in the kitchen. But Erin didn't take it back. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look uncomfortable. She just picked up her fork and continued eating. Like she'd announced the dinner schedule instead of ranking my worth in her life. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? What time is it where you are? I'd love to know, so drop a comment and tell me. And if this story is already hitting close to home, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next is going to show you exactly what happens when a mother finally stops bending. Now, back to that table. I stayed for the rest of the meal because leaving immediately would have made it worse. I've never been the kind of woman who storms out. I was raised to endure, to smooth things over, to make sure everyone else felt comfortable even when I was breaking apart inside. So I stayed. I smiled when Joseph's mother complimented the green beans. I nodded when his brother talked about his son's basketball team. I even helped clear the plates when dessert was finished, stacking them carefully in Erin's kitchen while she laughed at something Joseph said in the other room. But inside, something had shifted. Not broken, not cracked. Shifted. Like a bone that had been out of place for years finally sliding into alignment, and the relief of it was so sharp it almost felt like pain. When I finally said my goodbyes, Erin walked me to the door. She kissed my cheek the way she always did, light and quick, already thinking about getting back to her guests. "Drive safe, Mom," she said. "The roads are getting bad." "I will," I told her. She smiled and closed the door. I stood on her porch for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and conversation inside. The snow was coming down harder now, collecting on my coat and in my hair. I walked to my car, brushed the snow off the windshield with my sleeve, and sat in the driver's seat with the engine running, waiting for the heat to kick in. And that's when it hit me. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. For 26 years, I had poured everything I had into raising that girl. I worked double shifts when she needed braces. I cleaned office buildings at night so she could play softball. I ate ramen for weeks so she could go on her senior trip. I paid for her college, her car, her surgery, her house. I did it without hesitation, without keeping score, without ever once saying, "You owe me," because that's what mothers do. Or at least, that's what I thought mothers were supposed to do. But somewhere along the way, all that giving had taught her something I never intended. It taught her that I would always be there, that I would always say yes, that my needs didn't matter, that I came last. And the worst part? She just said it out loud, in front of everyone, and nobody had defended me. Not Joseph, not his family, not even Erin herself, after the words left her mouth, because they all believed it too. I drove home through the empty streets, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, replaying her words over and over in my head. Your needs come last. The snow was falling so thick I could barely see the road ahead, but I didn't care. I just kept driving, letting the windshield wipers scrape back and forth in a rhythm that matched the beating in my chest. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the house was dark. I'd left the Christmas tree lights on a timer, but they'd already shut off for the night. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and didn't bother turning on the lamps. I just stood there in the dark living room, staring at the faint outline of the tree in the corner, and let the truth settle over me like the snow settling outside. I had raised my daughter to know she was loved, but I had also raised her to believe I didn't matter, and that was on me. I walked over to the couch and sat down, still wearing my coat, still cold from the drive. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't pour myself a drink or turn on the television or do any of the things people do when they're trying to distract themselves from something painful. I just sat there, and I made a decision. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a quiet, steady decision that felt like the first real choice I'd made in decades. I wasn't going to fix this. I wasn't going to explain myself. I wasn't going to beg her to see me differently. I was just going to stop. Stop giving. Stop bending. Stop putting myself last. Because Erin had finally told me the truth, and the least I could do was listen. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Instead, I sat in that dark living room until the sky started to lighten, thinking about how we got here. About where it all began. 1997. That's when everything changed. Erin was 4 years old, still small enough that I could carry her on my hip when she got tired. Her father and I had been together since I was 23, married at 25, and by the time Erin came along, I thought we'd figured out how to make it work. I was wrong. He was a dreamer, the kind of man who always had the next big idea but never quite followed through. He'd promised to get a steady job, to help more with Erin, to stop disappearing for days at a time, and I believed him. Every single time, until the day I stopped. It happened behind a Safeway on Colfax Avenue in Aurora. I'd asked him to meet me there during my lunch break because we needed to talk about bills. The rent was late again. The electric company had sent a final notice. Erin needed new shoes because she'd outgrown the ones I'd bought her 3 months earlier. He showed up 20 minutes late in a beat-up sedan I'd never seen before. Out-of-state plates. Nevada, I think. He didn't get out of the car, just rolled down the window and looked at me with tired eyes. "I can't do this anymore," he said. I was holding Erin's hand. She was eating a cookie I'd packed in my purse, completely unaware that her world was about to split in half. "Can't do what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "This, fatherhood, marriage, all of it." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I'm not cut out for it. I thought I would be, but I'm not. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm leaving. Today. Right now." Erin tugged on my hand, asking if we could go see the ducks in the pond across the street. I told her to wait just a minute, sweetheart. I looked back at him. "Where are you going? Does it matter?" "It might. To her." He glanced at Erin for maybe 2 seconds, then looked away. "Tell her I'm sorry." And that was it. He rolled up the window, put the car in reverse, and drove out of that parking lot like he was just running an errand, like he hadn't just walked away from his entire family. I stood there watching until his car disappeared around the corner. Erin pulled on my hand again. "Mama, can we see the ducks now?" "Yeah, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "We can see the ducks." I never told her what happened that day, not the full truth. Anyway, When she got older and started asking where her daddy was, I just said he had to go away and couldn't come back. I never badmouthed him, never told her he abandoned us, never wanted her to carry that weight. But I carried it, all of it. The bills, the rent, the fear of what would happen if I couldn't make it work, the shame of being a single mother in a world that still looked at you sideways for it. I picked up every shift I could get at the call center where I worked. When that wasn't enough, I started cleaning offices at night after Aaron went to bed. My neighbor, Mrs. Kapoor, watched her for free because she said every mother deserves help, and she meant it. I'd come home at 2 a.m. smelling like bleach and floor polish, exhausted down to my bones, and I'd check on Erin sleeping in her little bed. I'd watch her breathe, her face peaceful and perfect, and I'd promise myself she would never feel what I felt that day in the Safeway parking lot. She would never feel abandoned. She would never wonder if she was enough. She would never go without. And I kept that promise. When she needed braces in 2007, I worked overtime for 6 months straight to cover the payment plan. When she wanted to play softball in 2009, I bought the glove, the cleats, the registration fees, even though it meant I ate soup and crackers for dinner most nights that season. When she cried in 8th grade because she didn't have the same clothes as the other girls, I picked up an extra cleaning contract and bought her what she needed. I never said no. I never made her feel like money was tight. I never let her see me struggle. Because in my mind, that's what good mothers did. They absorbed the pain so their children didn't have to. But what I didn't realize, what I couldn't see back then, was that I was teaching her something dangerous. I was teaching her that my needs didn't exist. That I was a bottomless well she could draw from forever. That sacrifice was just what I did, not something that cost me anything. By the time she got to high school, it had become automatic. She'd ask for something and I'd find a way to give it to her. A new phone, a class trip, money for homecoming, gas for the car I'd bought her when she turned 16. She never asked if I could afford it. She just assumed I could, and I let her. When she got accepted to Colorado State University in 2012, I cried in the parking lot of the admissions office. Not because I wasn't proud. I was so proud I thought my heart might burst. I cried because I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. But I figured it out. I always did. I took out loans. I worked every hour I could. I sold things I didn't need and a few things I did. I made it happen because that's what I'd been doing since 1997. Making it happen. Holding it together. Keeping her safe from the truth. She graduated in 2016 with a degree in marketing and a job offer in Denver. I was so relieved I almost collapsed. Finally, I thought, finally, she's set. Finally, I can breathe. But it didn't stop. That same year, her car broke down. Transmission failure. The repair cost more than the car was worth, so I bought her a used Honda. Reliable, safe, exactly what she needed. She hugged me and said, "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." And I believed that's all I needed to be. The best. The one who fixed things. The one who showed up. In 2018, she had gallbladder surgery. Insurance covered most of it, but there was still a chunk they refused to pay. Erin called me in tears, saying she didn't know what to do. I paid it. Of course I did. In 2020, she and Joseph wanted to buy their first house, but mortgage rates had spiked and they were short on the down payment. She didn't even have to ask. I offered. I told myself it was an investment in her future. I told myself any mother would do the same. I told myself it was love. And maybe it was, but it was also fear. Fear that if I ever said no, if I ever put myself first, if I ever stopped being the person who saved her from every problem, she'd look at me the way I looked at her father that day in the parking lot, like I wasn't enough. So I kept giving, and she kept taking. Not because she was cruel, not because she didn't love me, but because I had trained her to. Sitting in my living room that Christmas night, staring at the dark shape of the tree in the corner, I finally saw the pattern clearly. Every time I erased myself to make room for her, I taught her that I didn't need room. Every time I said yes when I should have said no, I taught her that my boundaries didn't exist. Every time I sacrificed without acknowledging the cost, I taught her that sacrifice was free. And now, 26 years later, she had looked me in the eye and said exactly what I'd spent decades teaching her. Your needs come last. I stood up from the couch, my legs stiff from sitting so long. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow still falling, covering everything in silence. And I whispered to the empty room, no more. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. And for the first time in 26 years, I meant it. The sun came up on December 26th, and I was still awake, still sitting in that living room, still turning everything over in my mind. But something had changed in those quiet hours. The fog had lifted. I could see clearly now, maybe for the first time in decades. I needed to know the truth, the real truth. Not the story I'd been telling myself about love and sacrifice, but the actual cost of those 26 years. I made coffee, strong and black, and went to the hall closet where I kept my files. Boxes and folders and envelopes stuffed with receipts, bank statements, payment confirmations. Things I'd saved without really knowing why. Maybe some part of me always knew I'd need proof someday. I spread it all out on the dining room table. Then I started adding. I began with 1997, the year her father left. The year it became just the two of us against everything. Childcare costs while I worked double shifts. Clothes and shoes she outgrew every few months. Birthday parties I threw even when I could barely afford groceries. Christmas presents I put on credit cards I was still paying off years later. Then elementary school. Field trip fees. School supplies. The violin she wanted to learn that cost $200. Used lessons every week for a year until she decided she didn't like it anymore. I didn't get angry when she quit. I just put the violin in the closet and kept working. Middle school brought braces, $3,800 over 2 years. I worked every overtime shift I could get at the call center. I took on 3 additional office buildings to clean at night. I remember my hands cracking and bleeding from the chemicals in the winter of 2007, wrapping them in bandages before I went to my day job so nobody would see. Erin got her braces off in 2009, and her smile was perfect. That's what mattered, I told myself. That's what it was all for. That same year, she joined the softball league. Registration, equipment, travel to tournaments in Colorado Springs and Fort Collins. I drove her to every single game, even the ones that started at 7 in the morning on Saturdays after I'd worked until 3 cleaning offices. I sat in those bleachers and cheered until my voice gave out. She never knew I was running on 2 hours of sleep. High school was worse. Not because she was difficult, but because the costs got bigger. Homecoming dresses, prom expenses, senior trip to California, college application fees. When she got accepted to Colorado State in 2012, I was terrified. I made decent money by then, but decent wasn't enough for tuition, room, board, books, everything a college student needs. I took out loans in my name. I picked up weekend shifts. I stopped buying new clothes for myself. I learned to cut my own hair. I drove my car until the check engine light became a permanent fixture on the dashboard. I sent her money every month for 4 years. Rent, groceries, textbooks that cost $300 each, a laptop when hers died during finals week, plane tickets home for holidays. She graduated debt-free. I was still paying off those loans. 2016. The car. Her old one died and she needed something reliable for her new job. I spent $7,200 on a used Honda Civic. I didn't tell her I emptied my emergency fund to do it. 2018. The surgery. Gallbladder removal. Insurance covered most of it, but there was still $4,300 they refused to pay. She called me crying, saying she didn't know what to do. And I told her not to worry. I put it on a credit card and made minimum payments for the next year. 2020. The house. She and Joseph found a starter home in a decent neighborhood, but they were short on the down payment. They needed $12,000. I gave it to them. I told them it was a gift. Told them not to worry about paying me back. Told them I was happy to help them start their life together. I didn't tell them I'd been saving that money for my own future. For the day when I might retire, when my body finally gave out from all those years of double shifts and night cleaning. I didn't tell them I had dreams too, but I gave them the money anyway. Because that's what I always did. I sat at my dining room table with receipts and bank statements covering every surface, and I added it all up. The number made my hands shake. $417. That's what I'd given her over 26 years, and that didn't even count the smaller things, the groceries I'd bought and dropped off when money was tight for them, the birthday gifts, the Christmas presents, the dinners I'd paid for, the gas money, the $100 here and there when she mentioned things were stressful. $68,000. I stared at that number for a long time. I want to be clear about something. I didn't regret giving her those things. I didn't regret working myself to exhaustion to make sure she had what she needed. I didn't even regret the sacrifices. What I regretted was what it had taught her. It taught her that I was an endless resource. It taught her that money appeared whenever she needed it. It taught her that my comfort, my future, my needs didn't matter as much as hers. And the worst part, I had done it to myself. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no, I trained her to expect yes. Every time I gave without setting a boundary, I trained her to take without asking. Every time I pretended the sacrifice cost me nothing, I trained her to believe it was free. I thought I was being a good mother, but I'd actually been erasing myself. I gathered up all the papers and put them back in the folders. But this time, I didn't put them away. I stacked them neatly on the corner of my desk where I could see them. Evidence. Proof. A mirror showing me exactly what I'd been doing for over 2 decades. Then I opened my laptop. It was time to do something I'd never done before. I logged into my bank account and looked at my checking, my savings, the small retirement account I'd been contributing to whenever I could. I looked at the credit card I'd used for Erin's surgery, still carrying a balance. The personal loan I'd taken out to help with her college expenses, still being paid down bit by bit. I looked at all of it with new eyes. And then I started making changes. First, I opened a new checking account at a different bank, one Erin didn't know about, one that had never sent money to her in an emergency, one that was just mine. I set up automatic transfers. My paycheck would go there now, all of it. Then I went through every shared expense, every automatic payment I'd set up over the years to help her and Joseph. Their car insurance that I'd somehow ended up covering 6 months ago when money was tight for them, the streaming services I paid for that they used, the phone bill that still had Erin on my family plan, even though she'd been married for 3 years. I canceled all of it. Every single thing. Then I changed my passwords, bank accounts, email, everything. I made them long and complicated, strings of words and numbers Erin would never guess. I wasn't doing it to hurt her. I was doing it to save myself. When I finished, it was almost noon. I'd been at it for hours. My coffee had gone cold. My back ached from sitting in the same position. But I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there. And I'd finally set it down. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow had stopped falling. The sun was out now, making everything bright and clean and new. I thought about what I wanted. Not what Erin wanted, not what Joseph needed, not what anyone else expected from me. What did I want? The answer came so fast it startled me. I wanted to rest. I wanted to wake up without dread. I wanted to go somewhere beautiful and just exist without anyone needing anything from me. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be a person, not just a source of money and solutions. I sat back down at my laptop and opened a new tab. I typed in 4 words: vacation packages, Maldives luxury. I'd never been anywhere tropical. Never been on a real vacation, the kind where you don't worry about the cost or count every dollar or feel guilty for taking time away. I scrolled through images of clear blue water and white sand beaches and overwater villas with glass floors where you could watch fish swim beneath you. It looked like a dream. It looked impossible. It looked like something I deserved. I found a resort with availability in March. A villa with a deck stretching over the ocean. 2 weeks, all inclusive. The price made me hesitate for just a moment. Then I thought about the $68,000. I thought about Christmas dinner. I thought about Erin's voice saying, "My needs come last." And I clicked the button. Booking confirmed. The confirmation email arrived 30 seconds later. I read it 3 times, just to make sure it was real. March 15th through March 29th, 2024. The Maldives. Just me. I closed my laptop and sat very still, feeling something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Freedom. I whispered to the empty room. The same words I'd said the night before, but this time they felt different. Stronger. Final. No more. This time, I wasn't just saying it. I was doing it. And it felt like waking up after 26 years of sleep. The weeks between Christmas and my departure became a quiet revolution. Nobody noticed because revolutions don't always look like explosions. Sometimes they look like a woman in her 60s reorganizing her entire life while the world assumes she's still the same person she's always been. I went to work every day at the call center. I smiled at my coworkers. I answered phones and resolved customer complaints and took my lunch break at the same time I always had. But everything underneath had shifted. My new bank account grew with each paycheck. The old one, the one Erin could see if she ever checked, stayed almost empty. Just enough to keep it open, just enough to look normal. I didn't tell her about the changes. I didn't announce that I'd separated our finances, or canceled the subscriptions, or removed her from my phone plan. I just let the automatic payments fail quietly, let her figure it out on her own. She called me 3 days into January. "Mom, something's wrong with the car insurance. They sent Joseph a notice saying the payment didn't go through." I was folding laundry when she called. I set down the towel I was holding and kept my voice steady. "That's strange. Maybe you should call them and update your payment information. But you always handle it." "I did," I said, past tense. There was a pause. I could hear her confusion through the phone. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not paying for your car insurance anymore. You're 30 years old and married. It's time you handled your own bills." "Mom, we talked about this. Money's been tight, and you said you didn't mind helping." "I said a lot of things," I replied. "I'm saying something different now." "Is this because of Christmas?" I almost laughed. Almost. Because of course she remembered. Of course she knew exactly what had changed, even if she didn't want to admit it. "Yes," I said simply. "It is." "Mom, I told you that came out wrong. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Erin, you said exactly what you meant, and I heard you. That's all." She was quiet for a moment. Then her voice got smaller, younger. "Are you mad at me?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "I'm not mad. I'm just done." "Done with what?" "Done putting myself last." I heard her inhale sharply, getting ready to argue or explain or smooth things over the way she always did when she wanted something. But I didn't give her the chance. "I have to go," I said. "My laundry's getting cold." I ended the call before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from anger, from relief, from the simple act of saying no and meaning it. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't because of pain or confusion. It was because I kept thinking about March, about turquoise water and warm air, and 2 whole weeks where nobody needed anything from me. I got out of bed at 2 in the morning and went to my desk. I pulled out a notebook, the kind with the blue cover I used to use for grocery lists and appointment reminders. I turned to a fresh page and wrote at the top, "Things I want to do before I die." It felt dramatic writing it like that, but I was 60 years old. I didn't have time to be modest about my dreams anymore. I started writing. See the ocean from somewhere warm. Sleep past 7 without feeling guilty. Eat breakfast without checking my phone. Read a book in the middle of the day just because I want to. Wear a bathing suit without apologizing for my body. Learn to paint. Visit a place where nobody knows my name. Go a whole week without solving someone else's problem. Remember who I was before I became someone's mother. I stared at that last one for a long time. Who was I before Erin? I'd been 26 when she was born, young enough to still have dreams that didn't involve someone else. I'd wanted to travel. I'd wanted to take art classes. I'd wanted to learn Italian and maybe spend a summer in Rome. But then life happened. Her father happened. Single motherhood happened. And all those dreams got packed away like winter clothes you tell yourself you'll wear again someday but never do. I closed the notebook and put it back in the desk drawer. Then I pulled up my bank account on my laptop and looked at the balance in my new account. It was growing. Not quickly, but steadily. Every paycheck, every dollar I wasn't spending on Erin's emergencies. For the first time in my life, my money was just mine. I started thinking about what else I could do with it. Not just the Maldives, but after. When I came home, what kind of life did I want to build? I made a list of things I'd been putting off. The bathroom faucet that had been dripping for 2 years. I could fix that now. The book club at the library I'd always wanted to join but never had time for. I could make time now. The painting class at the community center every Thursday night. I could actually go now. Small things, simple things. But they felt enormous because they were mine. January turned into February. The snow started to melt. Denver began to thaw. Aaron called a few more times, always with the same energy. Tentative, testing, trying to figure out if I was serious or if this was just a phase that would pass if she waited long enough. I kept my answers short and polite. Yes, I was fine. No, I didn't need anything. Yes, we could have lunch sometime. No. I couldn't watch my granddaughter this weekend. I had plans. I didn't actually have plans, but I liked the way it felt to say it. By mid-February, she stopped calling as often. Joseph called once, his tone somewhere between confused and annoyed. I don't know what's going on with you and Erin, but it's affecting her. She's stressed. She thinks you're punishing her. I'm not punishing anyone, I said calmly. I'm just living my own life. You've never acted like this before. Exactly, I said. That's the problem. He didn't call back after that. The quiet was strange at first. I'd spent so many years with my phone ringing, with text messages asking for help, with emergencies that needed immediate attention. Now my phone sat silent for hours at a time, and it felt like peace. March arrived with warmer air and the first hints of spring. Crocuses pushed up through the last patches of snow in my front yard. The trees started budding. I packed my suitcase a week early. 2 bathing suits, sundresses, sandals, a book I'd been meaning to read for 3 years, sunscreen, a hat with a wide brim. Everything fit in one bag. I didn't need much. That was the beautiful part. I didn't need anything except the chance to exist somewhere beautiful without being needed. The night before my flight, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and looked around my living room. The same furniture I'd had for years, the same pictures on the walls, the same quiet house that had seen me struggle and sacrifice and give until there was almost nothing left. I felt grateful for it. For the roof over my head. For the stability I'd built with my own hands. But I also felt ready to leave it for a little while. Ready to see what the world looked like when I wasn't carrying everyone else's weight. I finished my tea, washed the cup, and went to bed. Tomorrow, I'd board a plane. Tomorrow, I'd fly further from home than I'd ever been. Tomorrow, I'd start remembering what it felt like to be more than just a mother, more than just a solution, more than just someone who came last. Tomorrow, I'd start being myself again. I fell asleep with the window cracked open, letting in the cool March air, and for the first time in months I didn't dream about anything at all. Just darkness. Just rest. Just peace. The alarm went off at 4 in the morning on March 15th. I was already awake. I got up, showered, dressed in comfortable clothes for the long flight. I made coffee and toast, ate standing at the kitchen counter, watching the sky lighten through the window. My suitcase waited by the door. 1 bag. That's all I needed. I called a car to take me to Denver International Airport. I could have asked Erin to drive me, the way I'd driven her to the airport dozens of times over the years. Every college break, every work trip, every vacation with Joseph. But I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to give her the chance to make me feel guilty for leaving. The driver arrived at 5:30. He loaded my bag into the trunk and we drove through the empty streets of Denver while the city still slept. We passed the call center where I'd worked for over 20 years, the office building I used to clean on Tuesday and Thursday nights, the grocery store where I'd stretched every dollar to make sure Erin never went without. I watched it all go by and felt nothing but relief that I was leaving it behind, even if just for 2 weeks. At the airport, I checked in, went through security, found my gate. I sat in one of those uncomfortable chairs and watched other travelers rush past. Families with small children, business people in suits, couples holding hands, everyone going somewhere, just like me. The flight was long, Denver to Miami, then Miami to Malé. Hours and hours in the air, but I didn't mind. I read my book. I watched a movie. I ate the mediocre airplane food and didn't complain. Because I was going somewhere I'd only seen in photographs. Somewhere warm and blue and far away from everything that had defined my life for the past 26 years. When we finally landed in Malé, the heat hit me the moment I stepped off the plane. Thick and humid and completely different from the dry cold I'd left behind in Colorado. I took a boat transfer to the resort, watching the water change from deep navy to brilliant turquoise as we got closer to the island. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and pink and gold. When we arrived, a woman in a white uniform greeted me with a cold towel and a glass of something fruity and sweet. "Welcome," she said, smiling. "Your villa is ready." My villa. I'd never had a villa before. I'd barely had vacations before. She walked me down a wooden pathway that stretched out over the water. On both sides, the ocean was so clear I could see fish swimming below. The sun had almost set, but there was still enough light to see the coral formations beneath the surface, the gentle movement of the waves. We stopped at a door with the number 7 painted in elegant gold letters. She opened it and stepped aside. I walked in and forgot how to breathe. The villa was small but perfect. A bed with white linens, a bathroom with a shower that looked out over the water, a sitting area with cushions and pillows, and at the far end, glass doors that opened onto a wooden deck. I walked to the doors and opened them. The deck stretched out over the ocean. There were lounge chairs, a small table, steps leading directly down into the water. I stood there, the warm air wrapping around me, and felt something inside my chest crack open. Not break, open. Like I'd been holding my breath for decades and finally remembered how to exhale. "Is everything to your satisfaction?" the woman asked. I turned to her, and I realized I was crying. Not sad tears, something else, something I didn't have words for. "It's perfect," I said. She smiled, bowed slightly, and left me alone. I stood on that deck until the last light disappeared from the sky. Then I went inside, changed into pajamas, and fell asleep with the sound of water lapping against the pillars beneath me. I slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke up, the sun was already high and bright. I opened the doors and walked onto the deck, and the view in daylight was even more stunning than it had been at sunset. Water in every direction. Clear and calm and endless. I ate breakfast on the deck. Fresh fruit and yogurt and coffee that actually tasted good. I watched fish dart beneath me, their bodies silver and quick. Then I put on one of my bathing suits and walked down the steps into the water. It was warm, warmer than any bath I'd ever taken. I waded in up to my waist and just stood there, feeling the sun on my shoulders and the gentle movement of the ocean around me. I thought about Aaron, about Joseph, about Denver and the call center and the house in Lakewood and the life I'd built on sacrifice and exhaustion. And I felt nothing but distance. Not anger, not resentment, just distance, like that life belonged to someone else now. I spent the first 3 days doing almost nothing. I swam, I read my book, I ate meals on the deck, I napped in the afternoon without setting an alarm. I didn't check my email. I didn't call anyone. I didn't solve a single problem that wasn't my own. On the 4th day, I tried snorkeling for the first time. The resort provided the equipment and a guide who took small groups out to the reef. I floated on the surface of the water, breathing through the tube, watching an entire world exist below me. Coral in colors I didn't know existed. Fish in patterns that looked like paintings. Everything moving slow and peaceful and completely indifferent to my presence. I stayed out there for 2 hours. When I came back, my skin was pink from the sun and my muscles ached from swimming, but I felt more alive than I had in years. That night, I had dinner at the resort restaurant. I sat alone at a table overlooking the water and ordered fish I couldn't pronounce and wine that tasted like summer. A couple at the next table kept glancing at me. Finally, the woman leaned over. "Are you here alone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "That's so brave," she said, like being alone was something that required courage. I smiled. "It's actually really easy." She laughed and went back to her dinner. But I thought about what she'd said. Brave. Maybe it was brave. Maybe choosing yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else did take a kind of courage. Or maybe it was just finally waking up. By the 2nd week, I'd settled into a rhythm. I woke up early and watched the sunrise from my deck. I swam before breakfast. I spent the middle of the day reading in the shade. I walked along the beach in the late afternoon when the heat began to ease. I talked to other guests sometimes. A retired couple from Australia, a woman from Germany traveling alone like me, a family from Japan with 2 small children who built sandcastles near the water. But mostly, I was alone. And it didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. On the morning of my 10th day, I woke up to sun streaming through the open doors. I got up, made coffee from the little machine in the villa, and carried it out to the deck. I sat in one of the lounge chairs with a fresh coconut I'd ordered the night before. The staff had left it in a small cooler by the door, already opened, with a straw sticking out of the top. I sipped the coconut water and looked out at the turquoise ocean, and I thought about how far I'd come. Not just in miles, but in every other way that mattered. I'd spent 60 years being someone's daughter, someone's girlfriend, someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's emergency contact. But here, I was just me. No history. No obligations. No one who needed me to be anything other than a woman sitting on a deck drinking coconut water in the morning sun. I closed my eyes and felt the warmth on my face. And that's when my phone started buzzing. I'd kept it off for most of the trip, only turning it on once every few days to make sure nothing catastrophic had happened back home. But I'd forgotten to turn it off the night before. Now it was buzzing. Over and over. Calls coming in one after another. I opened my eyes and looked at the screen. 20 missed calls. 8 voicemails. Text messages filling the screen so fast I couldn't read them all. All from Aaron. From Joseph. From Joseph's mother. My heart started pounding. Something had happened. Something bad. I sat up, set down the coconut, and answered the next call that came through. It was Erin. Her voice was tight and high and barely holding together. "Mom, are you there? Are you home? We need you. Something happened." My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" "It's Joseph's father," she said, the words tumbling out fast. "He collapsed this morning. We rushed him to the hospital in Boulder. They're saying he needs surgery. Immediate surgery. But the bills, Mom, the bills are already huge and insurance is denying part of it and we don't know what to do and we need help. We need money. We need you to come back." I sat very still. The warm deck beneath me. The sound of gentle waves. The sun bright and perfect. And on the other end of the phone, my daughter's voice, frantic and desperate and absolutely certain that I would drop everything and fix it. Just like I always had. "Aaron," I said slowly, carefully. "You told me on Christmas that I come last." The silence on the other end of the phone was so complete I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard Erin inhale, sharp and sudden, like I'd slapped her. "Mom, that was a misunderstanding. You know I didn't mean it like that." "No," I said quietly, watching a small boat drift past my villa in the distance. "It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration. We can talk about that later," she said, her voice rising with urgency. "Right now we're drowning. Joseph's dad is in surgery and they're saying it could cost upwards of $40,000 after insurance. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have any savings left. Please, Mom, we need you." I closed my eyes and felt the sun warm on my eyelids, felt the gentle rock of the villa on the water, felt the peace I'd found here over the past 10 days. "Where is his family in this?" I asked. "They're helping, but it's not enough. His mom can maybe cover $10,000. His brother doesn't have anything to give. We're still short by so much, and the hospital wants a deposit before they'll even schedule the next procedure." "So his family comes first," I said softly. "Handle it with them." "Mom," her voice cracked. "I know I said something stupid at Christmas, but you can't actually believe I meant it. You're my mother. Of course you matter. Of course I need you." "You need my money," I corrected gently. "That's not the same thing. That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you invited me over for dinner without needing me to watch your daughter or help with something?" She didn't answer. "Aaron, I've been here for 10 days. You didn't notice I was gone until you needed something. I thought you were just busy. I didn't know you left the country." "Because I didn't tell you," I said. "Because for the first time in my life, I did something for myself without asking permission or making sure it was convenient for everyone else." "Where are you?" she asked, and I could hear the confusion mixing with the panic in her voice. "I'm in the Maldives." Complete silence. Then a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I couldn't tell which. "You left the country? While we're going through this?" "I left 2 weeks ago, long before Joseph's father got sick." "Can you come back? Please? We need you here. We need help figuring this out." I looked down at the water beneath my deck. So clear I could see every piece of coral, every fish, every ripple of sand on the bottom. "No," I said. "I can't come back." "Why not?" "Because I needed rest. Because I needed to remember what it feels like to breathe. Because I spent 26 years putting myself last, and I'm not doing it anymore." Her breathing got faster, more shallow. "Can you at least send money? Please? We need at least 15,000 to cover what his family can't. Maybe 20 to be safe. I know it's a lot, but Mom, he could die. Joseph's falling apart. I'm falling apart. We don't know what to do." There it was, the ask, the assumption that had lived underneath every conversation we'd had for decades. That I would give, that I would sacrifice, that I would save her. It wasn't the amount that stunned me. I'd given her more than that over the years without blinking. It was the certainty in her voice, the absolute confidence that I would say yes, that I would find a way, that I would put her crisis above my own peace. "No," I said. "I'm not paying." The word hung in the air between us. I'd said no to her before, small things, minor requests, but never like this, never when she really needed something, never when the stakes felt this high. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I said, "No, I'm not sending money." "Mom, you don't understand. This isn't like asking for help with groceries or something small. This is life and death. This is Joseph's father." "I understand perfectly," I said, and my answer is still no. "Why?" She was crying now, really crying. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you told me where I stand." And I listened. I said I was sorry. "No," I said, "you didn't. You said it was a misunderstanding. You said we could talk about it later. You never once actually apologized." She made a sound like she'd been punched. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I said that at Christmas. I'm sorry I hurt you. Does that help? Can you please just help us now?" "Aaron, you're not sorry you said it. You're sorry it had consequences." "That's not true." "Then tell me, what exactly are you sorry for?" She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her trying to find the right words, the words that would make me give in, the words that would make this all go away so she could get what she needed. "I'm sorry for making you feel like you don't matter," she finally said. "Do I matter?" I asked. "Of course you do. Then why am I only hearing from you when you need money?" "That's not. I've been busy, Mom. Life is crazy right now. You know how it is." "I do know how it is," I said. "I spent decades being busy raising you alone. I never once made you feel like you were too much trouble or that I didn't have time for you. I know, and I'm grateful. I really am. Grateful," I repeated, tasting the word. "But not grateful enough to treat me like I matter when you don't need something." "What are we supposed to do?" she asked, and her voice had shifted from pleading to something sharper, something that sounded like anger starting to break through the fear. "Just let Joseph's father die because you're mad at me?" "I'm not mad," I said, and I meant it. "I'm just done." "Done with what?" "Done being your safety net. Done sacrificing so you never have to feel uncomfortable. Done teaching you that my needs don't count." "I never said your needs don't count." "Yes, you did, on Christmas, in front of everyone. You said my needs come last." And I explained that I didn't mean it that way. "Then how did you mean it, Aaron? Explain it to me. How else am I supposed to interpret being told I come last?" She didn't have an answer. Or maybe she did, but she knew it wouldn't help. "Mom, please. I'm begging you. $20,000. That's all we need. You've helped us with more than that before. You paid for my college, my car, my surgery, the house. This isn't any different." "It's completely different," I said. "Those were my choices. I gave because I wanted to give. This is you demanding because you've learned to expect it. I'm not demanding, I'm asking." "No, you're telling me what you need, and assuming I'll provide it. There's a difference." "So what? You're just going to sit in the Maldives drinking coconuts while we lose everything?" "You're not losing everything," I said calmly. "You're facing a difficult situation, and you need to handle it the way adults handle things. Call the hospital and set up a payment plan. Talk to a social worker about financial assistance programs. Reach out to his father's insurance company and fight the denial. Sell something if you have to. Get a second job. Do what I did for you for 26 years. "Which is what? Figure it out." She sucked in a breath like I'd thrown cold water in her face. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm just not doing it for you. There's a difference. You're being cruel. No, I'm being honest. For the first time in decades, I'm being completely honest. Joseph was right about you, she said, and her voice had gone cold now, hard. He said you'd do this. He said the second we really needed you, you'd find a way to make it about yourself. Joseph can think whatever he wants, I said. But you might want to ask yourself why your husband saw this coming and you didn't. What's that supposed to mean? It means he knew I had limits. You never bothered to find out where they were. She was crying again, but this time it sounded different. Less like fear and more like fury. I have to go, she said. I have to figure out how to save my family since my own mother won't help. Aaron, I said, but she'd already ended the call. I sat there on the deck, phone in my hand, watching the screen go dark. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. But underneath the adrenaline, underneath the shock of what I'd just done, there was something else. Relief. I'd said no. I'd held the boundary. I'd chosen myself. And the world hadn't ended. I set the phone down and picked up my coconut, took a long sip. The water was sweet and cold and exactly what I needed. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. Joseph, this time. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. Hello, Joseph. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. We really need the money. Today. Your daughter is falling apart. I'm sorry Joseph's father is sick, I said. I truly am, but I'm not your safety net. This isn't the time for pride, he snapped. It's not pride, I said. It's boundaries. Boundaries? His father is in the hospital and you're talking about boundaries? Yes, because healthy people have them. You're unbelievable, you know that? Erin told me what you said at Christmas hurt her, but I told her you'd get over it. I told her you always come through when it really matters. Guess I was wrong. You weren't wrong, I said. I did always come through, past tense. What's changed? Everything. I've changed. No, you've just gotten selfish. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I've just finally learned the difference between generosity and erasure. Whatever helps you sleep at night, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. But when Erin realizes what kind of mother abandons her family in a crisis, don't come crying to us. I won't, I said quietly. You're hurting your own daughter. You know that, right? No, I said. I stopped hurting myself. There's a difference. He muttered something under his breath that I didn't quite catch. Then the line went dead. I set the phone down again and looked out at the endless blue water. They would figure it out. They would call the hospital. They would negotiate payment plans. They would lean on Joseph's family. They would do exactly what millions of people do when faced with medical bills and emergencies. They would survive. And so would I. I finished my coconut, stood up, and walked down the steps into the warm ocean water. I floated on my back, looking up at the cloudless sky, and let the water hold me. For the first time in 26 years, I wasn't holding anyone else. And it felt like coming home to myself. I turned off my phone after Joseph's call, completely off, not just silenced, but powered down. I put it in the drawer of the bedside table and closed it. Then I went about my day as if nothing had happened. I had lunch at the beach restaurant. Grilled fish and mango salad and iced tea so cold it made my teeth ache. I sat under an umbrella and watched the waves roll in, steady and unchanging, the way they'd been rolling in long before I got here and would keep rolling in long after I left. After lunch, I went back to my villa and napped with the doors open, the sound of the ocean pulling me into sleep so deep I didn't dream. When I woke up, the sun was lower in the sky, turning everything golden. I put on my bathing suit and went swimming, staying out until my fingers pruned and my muscles felt loose and tired. I showered, changed into a sundress, and went to dinner alone. The restaurant had tables right at the edge of the beach, close enough that you could hear the water, but far enough back that the sand wouldn't get in your food. I ordered wine, red, full-bodied, the kind I never bought at home because it felt too expensive for just myself. The waiter brought it in a glass so big I needed both hands to hold it properly. I sipped it slowly and watched the sun sink into the ocean, painting the sky in layers of coral and violet and deep, burning orange. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I was seeing it alone, without anyone needing me to be anywhere else, without guilt, without obligation, without a single thread tying me back to Colorado and all the years I'd spent being someone's solution. I thought about Aaron and Joseph, about the panic in their voices, about the genuine fear and stress they were facing, and I felt sorry for them. I did, but I didn't feel responsible. That was new. That was the part that would have terrified me a month ago. The idea that I could know my daughter was suffering and not immediately drop everything to make it stop. But I'd been suffering too, for decades, and she hadn't noticed. So maybe this was fair. Maybe this was necessary. Maybe this was the only way she'd ever learn that I was a person with limits, not an endless well she could draw from forever. I finished my wine and ordered dessert, some kind of coconut cake with passion fruit sauce. It was almost too sweet, but I ate every bite. When I got back to my villa, I sat on the deck in the darkness, listening to the water move beneath me. I thought about turning my phone back on, just to check, just to make sure there wasn't some new emergency, something worse. But I didn't, because I knew what would be waiting. More calls, more messages, more pressure, and I'd already given my answer. I went to bed early and slept straight through until morning. The next day was the same. Swimming, reading, eating meals without rushing. I talked to the woman from Germany I'd met earlier in the week. She was a doctor, traveling alone after her divorce. My husband thought I'd fall apart without him, she told me over coffee. He was certain I couldn't manage on my own, so I booked this trip just to prove I could. And can you? I asked. She smiled. I'm having the best time of my life. I understood exactly what she meant. On the afternoon of the third day since Aaron's call, I finally turned my phone back on. It took almost 2 minutes to load all the notifications. 37 missed calls, 22 voicemails, text messages that went on for screens and screens. I didn't read them all. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I just scrolled through, getting the general shape of the situation. Aaron, Joseph, Joseph's mother, even a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Joseph's brother. All saying variations of the same thing. We need help. We need money. How could you do this? Don't you care? What kind of mother are you? I was about to turn the phone off again when it rang in my hand. Joseph. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe I wanted to hear what he'd say now that a few days had passed. Maybe I wanted to know if anything had changed. Hello, Joseph. Finally, he said, and his voice was different now. Not angry, calculated, like he'd been planning exactly what to say. I'm glad you answered. I wanted to apologize. That caught me off guard. Apologize? Yes. I was harsh the other day. I was scared, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. I didn't say anything. Just waited. The thing is, he continued, his tone smooth now, almost friendly. We've been thinking about this all wrong. We shouldn't have called you asking for help like you owe us something. You're right. You've done so much already. More than most mothers would do. Okay, I said slowly. So we're not asking you to just give us the money. We're asking for a loan. We'll pay you back. Every penny. With interest if you want. A loan. Yes. We'll put it in writing. Make it official. That way it's a business transaction, not charity. Would that feel better? I almost laughed. Almost. Because this was new. This was strategy. This was Joseph realizing that guilt wasn't working, so he was trying something else. How would you pay me back? I asked. We'd set up a payment plan, maybe $500 a month, or whatever works for you. Joseph, you just told me you don't have any savings. You couldn't cover your father's medical bills. Where would $500 a month come from? He hesitated. We'd make it work, cut back on things. Maybe I'd pick up extra shifts. You'd go into debt to pay me back, for going into debt to help you? If that's what it takes, yes. That doesn't make sense. It makes sense if it saves my father's life, he said, and now there was an edge creeping back into his voice. Look, I know you're upset about Christmas. I get it. Aaron said something thoughtless and you have every right to be hurt. But this is bigger than that. This is about whether you're willing to help your family in a genuine crisis. It's not my crisis, I said quietly. He's your grandson's grandfather. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Of course it does. I hope he recovers. I hope the surgery goes well, but that doesn't make it my responsibility to pay for it. We're not asking you to pay for all of it, just a portion, just enough to get us through. And when the next crisis comes? When something else happens and you don't have the money? Do I loan you more? Do I keep being the backup plan every time life gets hard? That's not fair. Isn't it, Joseph? Be honest with me. If I give you this money, or loan it, or whatever you want to call it, when do you imagine you'll actually pay me back? Silence. You can't answer that because you know you won't. You'll have good intentions, but something will always come up. Something will always be more urgent. And 5 years from now, we'll all just quietly pretend the loan never happened. You don't know that. I know that I gave Erin $12,000 for your house down payment, and she called it a gift and never mentioned paying me back. That was different. You offered. I did, and you took it. And neither of you ever once asked if I could afford it, or what it cost me, or whether I had other plans for that money. We assumed you wouldn't offer if you couldn't afford it. That's the problem, Joseph. You assumed. You both assumed I had unlimited resources, unlimited willingness, unlimited capacity to put myself last. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had gone cold. So that's it? You're really going to let us struggle? You're not going to struggle, I said. You're going to do what everyone does. You'll call the hospital billing department. You'll apply for financial assistance. You'll set up a payment plan. You'll figure it out. We shouldn't have to figure it out alone when you could help. Why not? I figured everything out alone for 26 years. That was your choice. You chose to raise Erin alone. No, I said, feeling anger flare for the first time. Her father chose to leave. I chose to stay. There's a difference. Well, you're choosing to leave now, aren't you? I'm choosing myself. Finally, after 6 decades of choosing everyone else first. That's a nice way to justify abandoning your family. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just not rescuing you. Those aren't the same thing. They feel the same from where I'm standing. Then maybe you're standing in the wrong place, I said. He laughed, but it was bitter. Erin said you'd changed. She said something broke in you at Christmas. I guess she was right. Nothing broke, I said. Something woke up. Whatever you need to tell yourself. His voice was pure contempt now. The friendly act completely dropped. But you should know that Erin is destroyed. She's barely eating, barely sleeping. She keeps saying she doesn't understand why her own mother hates her. I don't hate her. Then prove it. Send the money. No. You're really going to choose your pride over your daughter's well-being? This isn't pride, Joseph. This is survival. Survival, he repeated, mocking. You're sitting in the Maldives drinking cocktails and you're calling it survival. I'm sitting in the Maldives, remembering what it feels like to exist without being needed. And yes, that is survival. Because I was disappearing, Joseph. I was erasing myself piece by piece to make room for everyone else. And if I hadn't stopped, there wouldn't have been anything left. That's dramatic. It's the truth. Well, here's another truth, he said, his voice hard. When you come back and realize what you've done, when you see the damage you've caused, don't expect us to just forgive and forget. Some things can't be fixed. I know, I said softly. I'm counting on it. That stopped him. I could hear his breathing on the other end, fast and frustrated. You really don't care, do you? I care, I said. I just care about myself more than I used to. And I know that terrifies you, because it means you can't control me anymore. I never controlled you. No. But you benefited from me controlling myself. From me always saying yes. From me always being available. And now that I'm not, you don't know what to do. You know what? He said. Forget it. We don't need you. We'll figure it out ourselves. And when we do, remember that you chose this. You chose to be cut out. Okay, I said. Okay? He sounded stunned. That's all you have to say? What else is there? He didn't answer. Just ended the call. I set the phone down and looked out at the water. The sun was starting to set again, the sky turning pink at the edges. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief. I'd held the line. Again. Even when they changed tactics, even when they tried manipulation instead of guilt, I'd said no, and I'd meant it. I turned the phone off again and went inside to change for dinner. Tonight, I'd order the most expensive thing on the menu. Tonight, I'd celebrate choosing myself, because this wasn't cruelty. This was freedom, and I was finally learning the difference. After Joseph's call, something shifted. The phone stopped ringing. I kept it off for another full day, just to be safe. When I finally turned it back on, there were no new messages, no missed calls, nothing. The silence was louder than all the panic had been. I tried to figure out how I felt about it. Part of me had expected them to keep pushing, to escalate, to find new ways to apply pressure. But they'd stopped. Maybe they'd finally accepted my answer. Maybe they'd found another solution. Maybe they were just regrouping. I didn't know. And for the first time in my life, I was okay with not knowing. I had 4 days left in the Maldives, and I intended to use every single one of them. That morning, I signed up for a sunrise snorkeling trip. We left the resort while it was still dark, a small group of 6 people in a boat heading out to a reef the guide said was special. When the sun started to rise, we were already in the water. I floated on the surface and watched the light change everything below me. The coral went from gray shadows to brilliant colors, purple and orange and electric blue. Fish appeared like they'd been painted into existence by the sunlight. It was so beautiful it hurt. I stayed in the water until my lips turned blue, and the guide gently suggested it was time to head back. On the boat ride to the resort, the woman from Germany sat next to me. "You look different than when you arrived," she said. "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you've put something down." I smiled. "I have." "Good," she said. "Whatever it wasn't yours to carry." I thought about that for the rest of the day, about all the things I'd been carrying that were never mine to begin with. Erin's father's abandonment, her need for stability, her assumption that I would always be there, Joseph's expectation that family meant unlimited access to my resources. None of it had been mine, but I'd picked it up anyway, and now I'd finally set it down. That afternoon, I treated myself to a massage at the resort spa. An hour and a half of someone else taking care of me, working out knots in my shoulders I didn't even know were there. The therapist was a small woman from Thailand who barely spoke but had hands that seemed to know exactly where I'd been holding tension for years. When it was over, she placed her hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "You can let go now." I almost cried. Instead, I thanked her, tipped her everything I had in my wallet, and walked back to my villa feeling like I was floating. I spent the evening on my deck with a book I'd been trying to finish for 3 days. I kept getting distracted by the view, by the sound of the water, by the simple pleasure of having nothing I had to do and nowhere I had to be. As the sun set, I put the book down and just watched. Watched the sky turn from blue to gold to pink to deep purple. Watched the stars start to appear, more stars than I'd ever seen in Denver where the city lights washed them out. I thought about Erin, about whether she was okay, about whether Joseph's father had made it through surgery, about whether they'd figured out the money situation. I felt concerned. I felt hope that everything worked out for them, but I didn't feel guilty. That was new. That was the part that told me something fundamental had changed. I could care about her without sacrificing myself for her. I could hope she was okay without making it my job to ensure it. I could love her and still choose myself. The next morning, I woke up to rain. Not the cold, miserable rain of Colorado, but warm, tropical rain that felt more like a shower than a storm. I stood on my deck and let it soak me, tilting my face up to the sky, feeling it wash away the last bits of doubt and guilt and old habits that had kept me small for so long. When it stopped, the sun came out and everything sparkled. I spent the day doing nothing in particular. I walked along the beach. I had a long lunch. I napped in the afternoon. I talked to the couple from Australia who told me about their grandchildren and their farm and their plans to spend 6 months traveling now that they'd retired. "Life's too short," the husband said, "to keep putting yourself last." His wife nodded. "We spent 40 years building a life for our kids. Now we're building one for us." I told them I was doing the same thing. "Good for you," the wife said and squeezed my hand. "It's never too late to start." That evening, I had dinner at a different restaurant, one on the far side of the island that required a golf cart ride to reach. I ordered fish I'd never heard of and wine from a region I couldn't pronounce. Everything tasted like freedom. After dinner, I walked along the beach in the dark, letting the warm water lap at my ankles. The moon was almost full, bright enough to see by, turning everything silver and shadow. I thought about going home, about what waited for me in Colorado. The same house, the the same job, the same life. But I wouldn't be the same. And that changed everything. I went back to my villa and sat on the deck one more time, phone in hand, finally ready to check if there was any news. I turned it on and waited while the messages loaded. There was only one, a text from Aaron, sent that afternoon. It was short. "Dad is stable. We figured things out. I'm sorry for everything." I read it 3 times. Dad is stable. So Joseph's father had made it through. Whatever they'd figured out financially had been enough. We figured things out. They'd done exactly what I'd told them to do. They'd handled it themselves. I'm sorry for everything. Not sorry for Christmas. Not sorry for specific words or actions. Just sorry for everything, which could mean nothing, or could mean she was starting to understand. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't poetic or detailed or even particularly heartfelt. But it was real, and real was enough. I didn't respond right away. I put the phone down and looked out at the ocean one more time. They'd survived without me. They'd figured it out. They'd done what adults do when faced with a crisis and no one swoops in to save them. They'd grown up a little. And so had I. I picked up my phone and typed a simple response. "I'm glad he's okay. I'll be home in 3 days." I hit send and then turned the phone off again. I had 3 more days of peace. 3 more days of warm water and quiet mornings and meals I didn't have to rush through. 3 more days of remembering who I was underneath all the years of being needed. I intended to use every minute. That night, I slept deeply and dreamlessly, the sound of water beneath me, the smell of salt air drifting through the open doors. And when I woke up the next morning, I felt ready. Ready to go home. Ready to face whatever came next. Ready to be a different kind of mother. The kind who loved fiercely but didn't disappear. The kind who helped when she could but didn't destroy herself when she couldn't. The kind who had boundaries and kept them. The kind who came first in her own life. I got up and made coffee and carried it out to the deck and watched the sun rise over the ocean one more time. And I thought about all the sunrises I'd missed over the years because I was too busy, too tired, too focused on everyone else's needs to notice the beauty right in front of me. I wouldn't miss them anymore. I wouldn't miss anything anymore. Because I'd finally learned the most important lesson of my 60 years. You can't pour from an empty cup. And mine had been empty for so long I'd forgotten what full felt like. But I remembered now, and I wasn't going back. I spent my last 3 days in the Maldives doing all the things I'd done before. Swimming, reading, eating good food, watching sunsets. But there was a different quality to it now. A sense of completion, of having crossed some invisible threshold I couldn't go back over even if I wanted to. On my final morning, I packed my suitcase slowly, carefully. I didn't want to leave, but I was ready to go home. Ready to build a life that looked like these 2 weeks, peaceful, intentional, mine. I took one last look at the villa, at the deck stretching over the turquoise water, at the view that had given me back to myself. Then I picked up my bag and walked out. The boat ride back to Malé, the flight to Miami, the connection to Denver. All of it felt different than the journey here. I wasn't running away anymore. I was walking towards something new. When the plane touched down in Denver, I turned on my phone and let it reconnect to the local network. One new message from Aaron. "Let me know when you're home. I'd like to come over and talk, if that's okay." I looked at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, "I'll be home tonight. You can come by tomorrow afternoon." Short, simple, boundaried. I hit send and collected my bag from the overhead compartment. It was time to go home. Not to the life I'd left, but to the one I was finally ready to build. The drive from Denver International Airport to my house in Lakewood felt longer than the flight from Miami. Colorado looked exactly the same as when I'd left. The mountains still stood in the distance, snow still clinging to the peaks even though it was early April. The streets were familiar, the buildings unchanged. But I was different. I could feel it in the way I held the steering wheel, in the way I looked at my neighborhood when I pulled into the driveway, in the way I walked into my house and set down my suitcase. This was still my home. But I was no longer the woman who'd left here 2 weeks ago, hollow and exhausted and invisible. I unpacked slowly, putting things away, doing laundry, restocking my refrigerator with food from the grocery store down the street. Normal tasks. The kind of things you do when you return from a trip. But everything felt significant somehow, like I was building something instead of just maintaining it. That night, I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables and a glass of wine. I ate at my kitchen table instead of in front of the television. I took my time. I tasted every bite, and when I was done, I didn't immediately jump up to clean. I just sat there, finishing my wine, looking around at my small house and feeling grateful for it. Grateful for the stability I'd built with my own hands. Grateful that it was mine. I went to bed early and slept hard, my body still adjusting to the time change, my mind still processing everything that had happened. When I woke up the next morning, I remembered. Aaron was coming over this afternoon. I felt nervous. Not afraid, exactly, just uncertain about what this conversation would look like. Whether she was coming to apologize or to try one more time to make me feel guilty, whether anything had actually changed or if this was just a temporary truce until the next crisis. I cleaned the house, even though it didn't need it. Made coffee, even though I'd already had 2 cups. Changed my clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater. At 2 o'clock, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Erin getting out of her Honda, the one I'd bought her years ago. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. She stood by her car for a moment, like she was gathering courage, before walking to my front door. I opened it before she could knock. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." We stood there for a second, neither of us quite sure how to start. Then I stepped back and gestured for her to come in. She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap. I sat in the chair across from her, not next to her. I needed the distance, needed the space to hold my ground. "How was your trip?" she asked quietly. "It was good, really good. I've never been anywhere like that. The Maldives." "I know," I said. "Neither had I." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "Joseph's dad is home now. He's recovering. It was touch and go for a while, but he made it through. I'm glad." We set up a payment plan with the hospital. His mom took out a loan for her part. We're going to be paying it off for years, but we'll manage. "You figured it out," I said. "We didn't have a choice." She looked up at me, and her eyes were wet. "You made sure of that." I didn't flinch, didn't apologize, just waited. "I was so angry at you," she continued. "For weeks, I was furious. I told Joseph you were being cruel. I told his family you'd abandoned us. I told myself you didn't care about me anymore. And now?" She took a shaky breath. "Now I think maybe you cared about yourself for the first time in my entire life, and I didn't know how to handle it." Something in my chest loosened. "Erin, why did you say I come last? At Christmas, in front of everyone, why did you say that?" She closed her eyes. "Because I believed it. Because you'd spent my whole life showing me it was true. Every time I needed something, you gave it. Every time I asked for help, you said yes. Every time there was a choice between you and me, you chose me. So you thought that's how it was supposed to be." "Yes," she whispered. "I thought that's what mothers do. I thought loving me meant erasing yourself. That's what I taught you." She looked at me, surprised. "You're not going to argue? You're not going to say I should have known better?" "No, because it's true. I did teach you that. Every time I sacrificed without acknowledging the cost, I taught you that sacrifice was free. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no, I taught you that my boundaries didn't exist." "Why?" she asked, and she sounded so young. "Why did you do that?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Because your father left. And I was terrified that if I ever disappointed you, if I ever wasn't enough, you'd leave too. So I made myself into someone who could never disappoint you. Someone who would always be there, always say yes, always put you first. But that's not sustainable." "No," I said. "It's not." And eventually I had nothing left. She was crying now, tears running down her face. "I took everything from you." "I gave it," I said gently. "You didn't take it. I gave it freely. But I gave it from fear, not from health. And that's on me, not you. I should have noticed. I should have seen what it was costing you. Maybe. But I hid it well. I wanted you to think it was easy. That's part of the problem." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "When you didn't come back, when you didn't send the money, I felt like my world was ending, like I'd lost you. And I realized I'd never actually had to function without you before. Not really. You've been my safety net for 30 years. And now you know you can survive without one. It's terrifying. It is, I agreed. But it's also freedom. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I could see her trying to understand, trying to see me as something other than just her mother, as a person, as someone with needs and limits and dreams. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you. What do you mean? I leaned forward. Erin, I love you. I will always love you, but I can't go back to the way things were. I won't be your emergency fund anymore. I won't drop everything every time you need help. I won't erase myself to make room for you. I don't want you to, she said quickly. I don't want that anymore either. It's easy to say that now, but what about next time? What about when something goes wrong and you're scared and you need help? Then I'll ask. Really ask. Not assume, not demand. And if you say no, I'll accept it. Can you do that? She hesitated. I don't know, but I want to try. I sat back. That's all I'm asking. For you to try. We were quiet for a moment. Outside, I could hear a neighbor mowing their lawn, the sound distant and ordinary. I'm sorry, Mom, Erin said, and this time her voice was steady, clear. I'm sorry I told you that you come last. I'm sorry I took you for granted. I'm sorry I never asked what you needed or what you wanted or whether you were okay. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to wake me up. I felt tears in my own eyes now. I'm sorry too. I'm sorry I taught you that I didn't matter. I'm sorry I made myself so small you forgot I was even there. She stood up and crossed the space between us, kneeling in front of my chair. She took my hands in hers. You matter, she said. You matter so much. And I'm going to do better. I promise. Don't promise, I said. Just do it. One day at a time. She nodded and then hugged me. Really hugged me. Not the quick, obligatory hugs she usually gave, but a real embrace that lasted long enough for me to feel her shaking. I held her and stroked her hair the way I used to when she was small. But when we pulled apart, I didn't try to fix anything. Didn't offer money or solutions or reassurance that everything would be okay. I just let her sit with the reality of what we'd both learned. She stayed for another hour. We talked about easier things, about her job, about my trip, about the painting class I was thinking of taking at the community center. When she got up to leave, she paused at the door. Can I call you next week? Just to talk? I'd like that, I said. Not because I need anything, just because I want to. Even better. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and left. I stood at the window and watched her drive away. Then I went to my kitchen and made myself tea. I carried it to the living room and sat in my favorite chair and looked around at my quiet house. This was my life now. Not perfect, not easy, but mine. And for the first time in 60 years, that felt like enough. Actually, it felt like more than enough. It felt like everything. I pulled out the notebook where I'd written my list of things I wanted to do. I read through it again, and then I added one more line at the bottom. Learn to put myself first without apologizing. I was already doing it, but I wanted to keep doing it. For the rest of my life, I picked up my phone and searched for painting classes. Found one starting next Thursday at the community center, just like I'd seen before I left. I signed up without hesitation. Then I texted the woman from Germany I'd met in the Maldives. We'd exchanged numbers on my last day, promising to stay in touch. I'm home, different than when I left. Thank you for your friendship. She texted back almost immediately. Good. Stay different. You've earned it. I smiled and set the phone down. The afternoon sun was streaming through my windows, making everything warm and golden. I sat there in the light and let myself feel it. All of it. The peace, the relief, the hope. The knowledge that I'd finally chosen myself and the world hadn't ended. It had just begun. 6 months have passed since I came home from the Maldives. 6 months since I chose myself. 6 months since everything changed. Spring turned into summer, and summer into fall. The leaves in Denver turned gold and red, and I watched them from my painting class at the community center every Thursday night. I'm not good at painting yet. My trees look more like broccoli, and my skies tend toward muddy purple instead of the soft blues I'm aiming for. But I don't care. I'm learning. I'm trying. I'm doing something just for the joy of it, not because it serves anyone else. The instructor, a retired art teacher named Margaret, told me last week that I'm improving. You're loosening up, she said. At the beginning, you painted like you were afraid of making mistakes. Now you're just painting. She was right. I'd spent so much of my life afraid of getting it wrong, afraid of disappointing people, afraid of taking up space I hadn't earned. I wasn't afraid anymore. Erin calls me once a week now, sometimes twice, not when she needs something, but just to talk. About her day, about mine, about nothing in particular. Last Tuesday, she called to tell me about a book she'd read that made her think of me. It's about a woman who travels alone through Europe after her divorce, she said, and she learns all these things about herself she never knew. It reminded me of your trip. I wasn't divorced, I said. No, but you were alone for the first time, really alone, and you came back different. Is that a good thing? I asked. It's the best thing, she said quietly. I have my mom back, the real one, not the one who was slowly disappearing. We talked for an hour that day, about books and travel and dreams we'd each been too afraid to say out loud. When we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand and marveled at how different our relationship felt, how much lighter, how much more honest. She'd kept her word. She asked before assuming. She accepted no without making me feel guilty. She showed up to things without expecting me to solve her problems. And when I offered help now, which I did sometimes because I wanted to, not because I felt obligated, she thanked me like it was a gift instead of an expectation. That's what had been missing all those years. Gratitude, appreciation, the acknowledgement that what I gave cost me something, even if I gave it willingly. Joseph's father recovered fully. I heard about it through Erin, who mentioned it casually one day, the same way you'd mentioned the weather. He's doing great. Back to playing golf and annoying Joseph's mom. I'm glad, I said. And I meant it. We're still paying off the hospital bills, she added. But we're managing. We had to cut back on some things, but it's made us more careful with money, more intentional. That's not a bad thing. No, she agreed. It's not. She didn't thank me for refusing to pay, but I think she understood now why I'd done it, why I'd let them struggle, why I'd chosen my peace over their panic, because some lessons can only be learned the hard way. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let people figure things out on their own. I joined the book club at the library in May. We meet every other Wednesday evening, and last month we read a novel about 3 generations of women in a family, each one trying to break free from the patterns the previous generation had set. During the discussion, I found myself talking about my own life, about Erin, about the years of sacrifice, about the moment at Christmas when everything shifted. The other women listened, some of them nodding, some of them wiping their eyes. When I finished, a woman named Ruth, who must have been in her 70s, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Good for you, she said. I waited until I was 72 to do what you did at 60. I wish I'd been braver sooner. It's never too late, I told her. No, she agreed, but earlier is better. I thought about that on my drive home, about all the years I'd wasted being small, being quiet, being convenient. But I didn't let myself dwell on regret. I couldn't change the past. I could only live differently now. And I was. In August, I took another trip. Nothing as extravagant as the Maldives, just a long weekend in Santa Fe. I'd always wanted to see the art galleries there, the adobe buildings, the way the light looked on the desert. I drove instead of flying, taking my time, stopping at small towns along the way. I stayed in a little inn with a courtyard full of flowers and spent 3 days wandering through galleries and eating at restaurants I'd read about online. I went alone, and I loved every minute of it. On my last evening there, I sat in the courtyard with a glass of wine and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. A couple sitting nearby asked if I was traveling by myself. Yes, I said. Brave, the woman said, the same word I'd heard before, but this time, I corrected her. Not brave, I said, just finally awake. When I got back to Denver, I made a decision. I'd been thinking about it for months, weighing it, wondering if I was ready. I decided to retire early from the call center. I'd been there for over 20 years, and I had enough saved now. enough between my small pension and Social Security to live simply but comfortably. I didn't need luxuries. I just needed freedom. I gave my notice in September. My supervisor was surprised. "You're one of our best employees," she said. "Are you sure?" "I'm very sure," I said. My last day was October 15th. My coworkers threw me a small party with cake and cards and well wishes. They asked what I was going to do with all my free time. "Live," I said. "Just live." They laughed, thinking I was joking. But I wasn't. For the first time in my life, I was going to wake up without an alarm, without obligations, without anyone needing me to be anywhere or do anything. I was going to paint and read and travel when I wanted to. I was going to take long walks and cook meals that took hours and sit in coffee shops watching people go by. I was going to exist without justifying my existence. And that felt revolutionary. Erin came over the weekend after my retirement with a bottle of champagne and flowers. "Congratulations, Mom," she said, hugging me. "You did it. You're free." We sat on my back porch, drinking champagne in the afternoon sun, and she asked me what I'd learned from everything that had happened. I thought about it for a long time. "I learned that love isn't supposed to erase you," I finally said, "that giving isn't the same as disappearing, that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop doing everything." She was quiet, turning her glass in her hands. "I'm still learning that," she said, "with my own daughter. Sometimes I catch myself doing what you used to do, saying yes when I want to say no, giving when I need to keep. And I have to stop myself and remember what it did to you." "What it did to both of us," I corrected. "You lost a mother who knew how to be a person. I lost myself. Nobody won, but we're fixing it now." "We are," I agreed. "One choice at a time." She raised her glass. "To new choices." I clinked my glass against hers. "To new choices." We sat there until the sun went down, talking about everything and nothing, and when she left, she hugged me again. "I love you, Mom. The real you. Not the version that disappeared to make room for me. I love you too, sweetheart." After she left, I stayed on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars come out. I thought about Christmas almost a year ago, about sitting at that table and hearing the words that would change my life. "Your needs come last." At the time, it had felt like a knife to the chest. Now, it felt like the wake-up call I desperately needed, but had been too afraid to hear. Because Erin had been right. In the life I'd built, in the pattern I'd created, my needs did come last. But that was my doing, not hers. And once I'd finally heard the truth, once I'd finally seen it clearly, I'd been able to change it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos from the Maldives. Me on the deck of my villa, me in the water, me at sunset with a coconut in my hand. I looked happy in those photos, genuinely happy. Not the tired smile I'd worn for years while pretending everything was fine. Real happiness. The kind that comes from rest, from peace, from finally putting yourself first. I set the phone down and looked up at the stars, so bright in the clear October sky. And I thought about everything I'd learned in 60 years of living. That sacrifice without boundaries is just self-destruction. That you can't love others well if you don't love yourself first. That saying no is not the same as being selfish. That your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. That it's never too late to choose yourself. And that when someone tells you where you stand in their life, you should listen. Then decide where you want to stand. I'd listened to Erin that Christmas. And then I'd chosen. I'd chosen freedom. I'd chosen rest. I'd chosen myself. And I would never, ever step back from that choice. Because I'd spent 26 years being a mother who erased herself. Now I was learning to be a mother who existed. And that was better for both of us. I stood up from the porch chair, gathered my blanket, and went inside. Tomorrow, I was going to sleep as late as I wanted. Then maybe I'd paint, or read, or drive somewhere I'd never been just to see what it looked like. The possibilities stretched out in front of me like an open road. And for the first time in my life, I was driving. Before I close, I want to ask you something. What would you have done in my situation? When someone tells you that you come last, how do you respond? Drop a comment and let me know. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, hit that like button and subscribe, because the truth is, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is finally put yourself first. I chose myself, and I don't intend to step back. Not for anyone. Not ever again.